You know you're in trouble when your wife starts ironing your work shirts again. Melissa hadn't touched that wrinkled pile of denim and starch in over 3 years, not since she declared herself too evolved for domestic chores. Yet there I was on a Tuesday morning, staring at a stack of neatly folded uniforms, crease perfect, collar popped like I was headed to prom instead of a double shift on line 4. My first thought wasn't gratitude, it was arithmetic. Something wasn't adding up. I walked into the kitchen half expecting a camera crew to jump out and tell me I'd won Husband of the Year. Instead, I found her phone. She never left her phone unattended. Melissa guarded that thing like a Vegas card dealer guards an ace. Face down, right by the toaster. The same toaster she hadn't used in months because she was off gluten, unless it was pizza night with her business girls. That was the moment, the click. Not a loud bang, not a crash, just a click. Something mechanical, subtle. A gear slipping. I flipped it over. Locked, of course. But the notification banner betrayed her. Confirmation. Your stay at Windsor Suites is reserved. Enjoy your return visit, Mrs. Carter. Carter's my last name, but we sure as hell never stayed at the Windsor. I stared at that screen for a full minute. No blinking, just thinking. I hadn't taken a day off in 6 weeks. I'd been working back-to-back Saturdays just so she could open her flagship pop-up across town, a boutique that never posted photos of the actual location, only the jewelry against vague backdrops and blurry hands. I always figured she was just bad at marketing. Turns out, she was excellent at misdirection. I set the phone down exactly how I found it. Still face down, still next to that smug, gluten-free toaster. I poured myself a cup of coffee and took it out to the garage. Not because I needed caffeine, but because I needed space. There's something about the smell of oil, steel, and rubber that keeps a man grounded. I looked around at the pegboard tools, the half-restored '88 Harley, the workbench stained with decades of sweat and WD-40. This was my world. Clean lines. Known quantities. If something squeaked, you found the source. If something didn't fit, you adjusted. But what do you do when your own wife starts modifying the blueprints without telling you? Melissa had been saying she needed more space to grow. She meant emotionally, but now I started wondering if she meant geographically. Geographically as in hotel rooms under our joint account. I knew better than to confront her without a full blueprint. My job at the plant taught me that. You don't stop the line just because one rivet looks suspicious. You document, you verify, you catch the pattern. So I went back to my closet and did something I hadn't done since 1992. I checked my old receipts. Call it habit. I found the credit card statement, paper, not online. She always said paper was for dinosaurs, but I liked keeping a hard copy. And there it was. Windsor Suites, billed last week. 2 nights. In my name. Paid in full. While I'd been elbow deep in a busted hydraulic line at work, she'd been sleeping on 1,000 thread count sheets, drinking mimosas on my dime. The betrayal wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was the convenience. The calculation. Melissa didn't cheat in a fit of passion. She cheated with strategic elegance. She booked the room using my info. She ironed my shirts so I'd leave early. She left her phone on purpose. A breadcrumb. Maybe she wanted to get caught. Maybe she thought I'd cry. Instead, I sat down, flipped open my factory logbook, and wrote a name I hadn't thought about in months. Trevor Lang. Independent parts supplier. Used to be a regular at the factory before I stopped signing his vendor forms. Slick guy. Too slick. I never liked how he smiled at Melissa at the annual barbecues. Like he already knew something I didn't. Melissa said he was just charming. I say snakes don't smile unless they're about to bite. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't scream, it whispers. It stains everything quietly. You don't hear it until the engine starts knocking, and by then, damage is already done. So I did what I always do when something breaks. I started making a plan. Quiet. Thorough. No shortcuts. Melissa thought she could cheat and walk away clean. But she forgot who built the system she's living off of. And I don't design for easy exits. It's funny how peace can rot from the inside out and still look polished on the outside. From a distance, everything looked like it was supposed to. I'd get up at 5, pack my lunch, and leave Melissa sleeping on her side with one hand curled under her pillow like a kid playing innocent. She'd still mumble, "Drive safe," when I kissed her forehead, still laugh at my bad jokes over dinner, still wear my old flannel when she watched her documentaries in bed. But the edges had shifted. I just didn't see it at first. I chalked it up to age, maybe hormones, maybe just the toll of being married for 19 years. She stopped meeting me at the door when I came home. Stopped making those little comments about my sexy calluses from the plant. Stopped asking how my day was unless she needed to pivot into how hard hers had been. And then there was the studio. That damn boutique jewelry studio that became her second religion. At first, I supported it. Hell, I paid for it, thinking it was good for her to have something of her own. She called it her sacred creative space, which I respected, even if it sounded like something from a midlife crisis blog. But the space kept growing, not physically, but spiritually. Suddenly, she needed nights to herself to sketch. Then full weekends to be with the creative energy. No product ever came home. No displays, no trials, no samples. Just blurry photos on Instagram, and not even under her name. She made a new handle when I wasn't supposed to follow. It's just for the aesthetic, she said when I asked. Men don't get it. But what I got was a wall slowly being bricked up between us. The woman who once wanted my hands on her back every night now flinched when I brushed her shoulder. She stopped asking me to reach the top shelf for her, started doing everything herself with this strange pride, like I'd become a relic in her personal museum. Her phone got quieter, but only when I was around. The ringer stayed off, the screen always face down, the lock screen now had a passcode where there wasn't one before. And then came the talk about boundaries. One night she said it like it was a life lesson she'd just discovered. Rick, I've realized I need better boundaries, she told me while cutting lemons like they'd done something wrong. I've given too much of myself to other people. I'm reclaiming my space. I asked her gently if that meant me. She said, you're part of it, but it's bigger than just us. Bigger than just us. Like I was some side character in the movie of her self-actualization. I swallowed it. Told myself she was going through a phase. That maybe I'd been working too much. Maybe I had taken her for granted. So I doubled down, started bringing her coffee in bed on Sundays, even bought her a new set of tools for her jewelry studio that she barely unwrapped. She smiled, said thanks, kissed my cheek, and left for her silent meditation retreat that weekend. I believed her. I did. Until the following Tuesday, when I was organizing the garage and found the retreat brochure, unopened, stuck behind a bag of old screws. She never went. Never even registered. Just disappeared for 3 days and came back smelling like hotel shampoo. Then there were the shoes. Red leather ankle boots, not Melissa's style. I found them under the passenger seat when I went to vacuum her car, thinking I was doing her a favor. She said they were for a friend's photo shoot, that the boutique was branching into fashion styling. But I couldn't stop thinking about how the soles were worn unevenly, like they'd walked a few city blocks, not just been modeled. Her laugh changed too. I heard it once when she was on the phone in the backyard, one of those breathy, high-pitched laughs she used to give me when we were dating, the one that meant she wasn't just amused, she was enthralled. When I stepped outside, she hung up immediately. Said it was her business partner. Funny thing was, she'd never mentioned a partner before. Now suddenly everything was we. We're designing a new line. We're scouting for a gallery space. I asked her one night who we was. She said, Rick, why are you being so insecure? It's just work. But the way she said it, calm, practiced, like she'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror, that's what stuck with me. I wanted to believe her. I really did. I still kissed her goodnight. Still fixed the leaky faucet she kept forgetting to mention. Still bragged about her business hustle to the guys at work like a proud husband. But late at night, lying next to her silence, I started listening differently. Her sleep used to be steady, rhythmic. Now it was restless, interrupted by dings she'd silence with one swipe and never explain. Once, around 2 a.m., I saw her texting with a faint smile on her lips, the kind of smile that used to be mine. I didn't say a word. I rolled over, stared at the ceiling, and told myself it was nothing. Just a bad dream that hadn't ended yet. Just a phase. Just a moment. But the cracks were spidering, and I was the only one pretending we still had glass. The moment came dressed in denim and mud, just like everything else in my world. I was at the plant, elbow deep in a busted valve actuator, when my phone buzzed. Nothing dramatic, just a vibration that danced across the workbench like it had somewhere better to be. I wiped the grease off my fingers and picked it up, thinking maybe it was the parts order I'd been waiting on. But it wasn't a call. It was a notification from our shared cloud account, one I forgot was even synced between our phones. New upload, 12 photos, timestamped the night she claimed to be at her gallery preview. I opened them without thinking. That's when everything turned. The first image was a glass of champagne held in a hand I recognized, Melissa's rings, her nails, her wrist, but the background didn't match the gallery. No art, no spotlights, no name tags or showroom walls. Just a hotel headboard. Cream-colored, with the kind of industrial lamps bolted to the wall above the pillows. The second photo confirmed it, a mirror selfie, her arm around a man's waist, his face hidden but not his belt buckle, which I knew didn't belong to anyone I worked with. The rest were worse, not graphic, but damning in their intimacy. A dinner plate for two, her shoes kicked off by the bed, him holding her ankle while she laughed into the camera. That smile again, the real one. The one she hadn't used on me in over a year. My chest didn't clench. My hands didn't shake. I didn't throw anything or yell or call her in some desperate fury. I just stood there in that steel-breathing room while the compressor hissed in the background like it was mocking me. I stared at those photos for maybe 60 seconds, maybe 20. Time didn't register. I was outside of it now. The kind of clarity you only get in car crashes or combat. Not the panic of loss, but the stillness of calculation. I closed the app, locked my phone, and set it back down on the bench like nothing happened. Around me, machines kept churning, bolts kept spinning, men kept shouting across the line. My whole world had just changed, and nobody knew. And that's exactly how I wanted it. I thought about how she'd kiss me goodbye that morning, not a peck, not cold, but just robotic enough to be strategic. I thought about how she'd told me last week, "Rick, I just need you to support me without always asking questions." Now I knew what that meant. Support her silence. Support her secrets. Be the floor she walked on while she danced above me with someone else. That wasn't a request, it was an ultimatum wrapped in therapy jargon. And I'd agreed. Like a goddamn fool, I'd nodded and said, "Whatever you need. Whatever you need." And she took that as permission. Not just to betray me, but to turn me into the silent partner of my own humiliation. What hit hardest wasn't the cheating itself, it was the efficiency of it. The ruthless coordination. The way she used my work ethic, my loyalty, my predictability like tools in her toolbox. I had helped build the perfect schedule for her affair. She knew exactly when I'd be gone, how long I'd be buried in machinery, when I'd be too tired to notice the subtle changes in her routine. She used that knowledge the way I use a torque wrench with precision. And now I had a choice. Not how to feel if feelings were over. What came next wasn't sadness or rage. It was logistics. If she could plan this so cleanly, so surgically, then I could return the favor. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't even accuse her. You don't argue with someone who's already decided you're disposable. You just make yourself useful one last time, long enough to turn the system she built into a trap. And I would. I'd show her what a real blueprint looks like. What happens when the man she underestimated stops loving her and starts thinking like a technician? Because I don't fix things with duct tape and hope. I dismantle, catalog, and rebuild with cold hands and clear eyes. That's the man she forgot she married. And now, for the first time in months, I knew exactly who I was again. The first thing I did was change nothing on the surface. Same schedule, same kisses on the cheek, same offhand jokes about her artist temperament. I kept playing the role she thought I was too stupid or too old to outgrow. But beneath that mask, every move I made had a purpose. I wasn't looking for revenge yet. Not until I knew the full scope. You don't tear down a house until you've mapped every beam, every wire, every rat hole. I started with the calendar, hers, not mine. We shared one years ago, synced to our phones, though she never used it much. Except lately, she had. Appointments that didn't quite add up. Vendor meeting, gallery lunch, creative retreat. I cross-checked them with my own logbook. Melissa never noticed that I keep one of those old-school daily planners in my truck, a habit from when digital systems crashed too often on the factory floor. I jot down where I was, who I spoke with, what time I clocked in and out. I compared the dates. While she was allegedly meeting clients 2 towns over, I was home early one night due to a busted hydraulic pump, and her car wasn't in the driveway. She came back 2 hours later, claimed she'd been at the co-op studio. I didn't say a word, just logged it. Next, I bought a burner phone. Simple flip model. Paid cash. I didn't use it to call her. I used it to create a fake email linked to a fake Instagram, posing as a new brand in the local fashion scene, looking to do a collab. Messaged her boutique account, the artsy one she didn't know I'd found. She responded within 20 minutes. Professional, courteous, almost flirty in tone. When we asked to meet, she replied that she only does face-to-face with qualified creatives and asked for a link to our portfolio. I created one. Took photos from a French jewelry house, scrubbed the metadata, and set up a dummy Wix page. She booked the meeting for Friday at 3 p.m. at a cafe downtown. Said she'd be at the studio all day when I asked. I nodded, kissed her forehead, and clocked out of work early. Didn't go to the cafe. Didn't need to. I parked a block away and waited. She arrived right on time, except she wasn't alone. He came in first. Tall, lean, smug in a way only someone who's never been punched in the mouth can be. Wore a suede jacket like he was allergic to labor. Melissa followed him in like a shadow. Sat across from him, touched his wrist when she laughed. I didn't need to hear the words. The body language was fluent. My second confirmation came the next day. I went into our bank history, not the main account, the side one we used for her business expenses. I'd never paid much attention before. That's the trap, isn't it? You trust someone long enough, you stop checking the locks. Recurring payments to a courier service standard until I noticed the pickup addresses weren't the boutique location. They were private homes. One of them was just a few blocks from the factory. I took a walk that weekend, just happened to pass by. Same suede jacket guy was washing a black Audi in the driveway. I kept walking. Logged it. Then came the best move. I didn't follow Melissa. I followed her friend Gina. The one who used to be a constant in our house, movie nights, wine tastings, craft fairs. But she'd disappeared lately. I bumped into her, by chance, at the grocery store and struck up casual conversation. Mentioned that Melissa said they'd been spending time together again. Her face twitched, just a second, but enough. Oh, yeah, we've reconnected, she said, like the words had to be filtered before use. I offered to carry her bag to the car. She let me. Then I asked, deadpan, if she could pass along the necklace I left in Melissa's studio last week. There was no necklace. Just bait. Gina paused, smiled, and said, sure. That was all I needed. By the next morning, Melissa was telling me about how Gina had found her necklace and might bring it by. That's when I knew Gina was in on it. Or at least knew. I wasn't just dealing with a two-timer. I was dealing with a network. Melissa wasn't drifting. She was migrating. Building a parallel life one careful brick at a time, assuming I'd be too dull, too blind, too beaten down by years of blue-collar repetition to notice. But I wasn't just noticing now. I was recording. I'd synced a small camera into the garage ceiling, positioned just right to catch her nightly calls when she thought I was asleep. I installed a keylogger on the old laptop she used in the studio, nothing invasive, just passive memory of the words typed and sites visited. The pieces were falling into place. The affair wasn't casual. It was consistent, coordinated, maybe even long-term. Every lie she told me, I anticipated. Every excuse she gave, I'd already disproven. She was still smiling at me, still kissing my cheek, still thanking me for believing in her. But now, every time she touched me, I logged it like a fingerprint at a crime scene. She thought she was in control, thought she was conducting this symphony of deception with grace and flair. What she didn't know was that the audience had changed. I wasn't watching the performance anymore. I was mapping the exits. I wasn't her husband. I was her shadow. And she didn't even know I'd already moved out, mentally, emotionally, strategically. I was hunting. And I was getting close. She walked into the restaurant like it was just another Tuesday night, hair curled, wearing the silver dress I bought her 3 anniversaries ago, the one she claimed was too dressy for anything but weddings. The hostess led her to the private booth I'd reserved, tucked in the corner away from the crowd. Candles flickered low, jazz hummed from the overhead speakers, and the wine I knew she liked was already breathing. She sat down across from me with a soft smile, trying to read my face. I smiled back, gently, calmly, like I was just happy to see her. I asked about her day. She said it was productive but exhausting. I nodded. I asked if the boutique was coming together. She said they were on the verge of something big. I let her talk. Let her weave her little masterpiece of half-truths. Then I slid the tablet across the table. Just one video file. No explanation. She didn't want to touch it. Her hand hovered for a second, then retreated. What's this? She asked, voice already tightening. Just something I thought you should see, I said, sipping my water like we were still talking about the weather. Eventually, she tapped play. It was a still shot, black and white, grainy, but unmistakable. Her, in the studio, sitting on the couch I'd moved in for her comfort. Him, sitting beside her. Their conversation wasn't audible, but the body language was a language anyone fluent in betrayal could read. Her hand on his knee, his mouth at her neck. Then the kiss. Slow, lingering, familiar. She paused it, finally, and stared at the table. Silence stretched. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. It's not what it looks like. I almost laughed. Almost. But I didn't move. Didn't flinch. It never is, I said. She looked up at me. I was already calculating angles of retreat. Rick, I swear, that wasn't recent. That was before we got serious about things again. I leaned in just slightly. That footage is from last Wednesday, 2:37 p.m. You told me you were at a supplier meeting. Her mouth opened, closed. I didn't mean for it to happen. I was confused. I thought maybe we needed time apart. I nodded again. So you thought a lie would help with that? She swallowed hard. You were so unavailable. Always tired. Always distracted. I didn't take the bait. I just stared. She shifted in her seat. Look, we didn't sleep together. It was emotional, not physical. Okay? You don't understand the pressure I've been under. Still calm, I replied. You used my name to book hotel rooms. You sent money from our joint account to his fake vendor LLC. You brought him into my life as a guest, then as a thief. I'm not confused, Melissa. I'm informed. Her eyes widened, and for a second, she forgot to breathe. Then came the flicker of defiance. You've been spying on me? That's sick, Rick. That's controlling. That's abuse. I smiled. Not wide. Just enough to let her know the game had flipped. You're welcome to tell that story, Melissa. You always did love rewriting endings. She stood, then sat back down when she noticed no one else in the restaurant cared about her drama. The isolation was complete. Her voice dropped to a venomous whisper. You don't get to do this to me. After everything I gave you. I tilted my head. You didn't give me anything, Melissa. You rented my loyalty to finance your exit plan. That was when the fear crept in. Not loud. Just behind the eyes. The realization that I hadn't just caught her. I'd mapped her. Every transaction. Every lie. Every cover story. So what now? She asked, voice finally brittle. You ruin me? You tell everyone. I took my time before answering. No, I said. You'll do that yourself. The difference is, this time you'll have to live in what you built. Alone. She blinked hard. For the first time, her mouth couldn't find a role to play. No victim, no savior, no misunderstood genius. Just a woman cornered by her own reflection. She looked down at the wine glass she hadn't touched. Her fingers trembled as they reached for the stem. Then she pulled her hand back. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I let the silence thicken, stretch, settle around her like smoke. She looked like she wanted to run, but didn't know which direction led to air. And I just sat there, still, watching, letting her feel every inch of the distance between what she thought I was and what I'd actually become. She followed me out of the restaurant like a ghost that didn't know it was already dead, her heels cracking against the pavement as she called my name in that breathy tone she used to use when she wanted to soften me. Rick, wait, just wait. Can we talk about this like adults? She said, jogging to catch up, grabbing my sleeve like we were still married in any sense that mattered. I stopped, slowly, looked at her hand, then at her face. She let go. You think you're so righteous now, huh? She spat, stepping in front of me. Like you've never made mistakes? Like you're some perfect little husband? I didn't respond. Didn't blink. Just let the silence hang long enough for her to hear her own voice echo in it. She paced in front of me like a caged animal. You want the truth? You were boring, Rick. A routine. A habit. I needed to feel something. I needed to know I was alive. I tilted my head just slightly. And you chose deceit. Efficient. That froze her for a second, like I'd slapped her without moving. I gave you everything. She shouted. I built a life with you while you hid in that greasy little garage of yours like a coward, fixing dead machines instead of your own damn marriage. I just watched her. Still. Measured. Letting her burn every bridge between us with her own fire. This wouldn't have happened if you were a real man, she snapped, voice shaking now, either from anger or desperation or some unholy cocktail of both. I stepped forward, close enough that she had to look up. A real man doesn't lie to the one who built the foundation under her feet. A real man doesn't cheat, Melissa. He leaves if he's done. She backed up a step. Her lip curled. You smothered me, Rick. Always hovering, always needing to be needed. I couldn't breathe in that house. I nodded, slowly. Funny. You never said that when the mortgage was due, or when you needed a new studio, or a new cover story, or a second phone. Her eyes widened, just a flicker, but enough. She was unraveling. You think you're better than me? She hissed. You think being quiet makes you strong? It just makes you a coward who doesn't have the balls to face what you did to me. I stepped past her, walked toward the truck. She followed again, her voice cracking. Say something. Yell. Scream. Do something. I opened the door, paused, and turned back to her. Why? I said, low and even. So you can feel like this means something to you? So you can script your next lie based on what I react to? You're not worth the sound. She looked like she'd been gut-punched. "You think this is over just because you caught me," she said, now gripping her own arms like she didn't know what to do with them. "You think this makes you some kind of hero? You're just a bitter old man who finally got smart too late." I leaned against the door. "Not too late. Just quiet long enough to make sure you couldn't bury the knife deeper before I pulled it out." She was crying now, tears mixing with mascara, streaking down the face I once used to trace with my thumb. But I felt nothing. Not rage. Not pity. Just distance. Clean, precise, permanent. "So what, Rick?" she said, sobbing through clenched teeth. "You're just done? That's it. 19 years, and you just walk away like it's nothing." I stared at her a long time, not to hurt her, but to give her space to hear the answer before I said it. "I walked away the moment I saw the real you," I said. "The rest was just cleanup." She took a step back, like the words physically hit her. "You don't mean that. You can't. You love me." I opened the door, stepped into the cab, looked at her one last time through the open window. I did. And that man died quiet. "You're talking to the one who buried him." I closed the door. She stood there, fist clenched, chest heaving, trying to figure out which version of me she was speaking to now. But she already knew. And it terrified her. Because for the first time, she couldn't predict my next move. And I didn't need to make one. Not yet. Not tonight. Let her sit with the silence. Let it stretch into every corner of the lie she built. Let her finally understand. I'm not the man she betrayed. I'm the one she set free. I began the next morning before the sun came up, in the same garage she once called my man cave, as if the only thing I did in there was avoid responsibility. This time I wasn't fixing an engine or organizing bolts. I was laying out the blueprint for the final stage of her exit, and unlike her, I wasn't going to leave a mess. I started with the paper trail, all the receipts I'd been gathering for weeks, scanned and backed up to an encrypted drive, stored in a portable hard copy locked inside my old metal toolbox. Bank statements, hotel reservations, cash withdrawals, fraudulent business expenses charged to our joint account. Every time-stamped lie, every financial betrayal, organized with the precision of a man who spent his life making sure things don't fall apart. Then I accessed our joint bank accounts. I didn't drain them. That's not how you bleed a parasite. You isolate the vein first. I created a new account under a private LLC I'd registered 2 months earlier, Carter Fabrication Consulting, named after a business that technically didn't exist but gave me the legal buffer to move funds. I shifted my payroll there. Then the bills. I made a list of every utility, every subscription, every shared liability with my name on it, and one by one, transferred or canceled them. The Wi-Fi, the water, the trash service, all redirected to my name alone, or disconnected if she wasn't using them directly. Her phone? Paid through my card. Not anymore. I cut the line at midnight and let her find out the hard way when her text stopped sending. The second wave came with the car. The Subaru she drove to her studio, parked outside his place, posed in for selfies. It was in my name. Always had been. I arranged for a remote disable via the dealer's GPS-linked service, scheduled precisely for Friday at 5 p.m. She'd be stranded mid-errand, wondering why her perfect little world suddenly stopped humming. The insurance followed. Policy revision, beneficiary changes, removed her from everything except the dental. I left her the teeth, seemed fitting. After that came the professional perimeter. I located her boutique's landlord, an old friend of mine from the plant whose daughter married into leasing. I sent him a clean, concise email, attaching documents proving Melissa was using the address for purposes unrelated to her lease, including proof of subletting inventory space without approval. No accusations, just facts. He'd already had complaints about strange traffic patterns and noise. Termination notice pending. Her supply vendor? A man who'd once done weekend car work for me. I asked him to verify if any of the parts she'd been charging were actually being resold online under a different boutique name. He got back to me with screenshots, listings, shipping data. I sent it all not to him, not to her, but to her partner in the venture. The one with money tied up in it. He'd invested in her charm, not her ethics. I figured he deserved to know his inventory was being skimmed for side profit. Meanwhile, I visited my lawyer. No courtroom drama, no threats, just clean execution. I filed for divorce under no-fault terms, but included documentation of financial misconduct. Not to fight her, to disqualify her from support. The house was mine before the marriage. The truck was mine. The land was inherited. Every major asset tied to my name alone. All she contributed were the curtains and betrayal. I ensured she got to keep both. But I wasn't done. The final blow was subtle, elegant. Her mother, a woman who never much liked me until I proved myself by fixing her water heater in a snowstorm, still thought we were building a life together. I visited her on Sunday afternoon, brought her the photos, the records. I told her not because I wanted her to take sides, but because Melissa would. She'd call, manipulate, beg. Better she hear the truth before the lies arrived. I left her with a folder, shook her hand, and said nothing more than, "She'll need you more than I do now." Then, the friends. Not a mass message, not some pity parade. Just surgical notes to the people who mattered. Her business mentor. Her college friend who'd vouched for the studio lease. Her coworker who once asked if I felt lucky to have someone so driven. I sent each a version of the same message. In case you've been part of this unknowingly, here's the context. Attached were the facts. The photos. No emotion. No commentary. Just evidence. I never insulted her. Never called her names. I let her own actions define her. And as all this moved into motion, accounts locking, partnerships crumbling, reputations twisting like nails under pressure, she kept smiling at me at home, still playing the part of the misunderstood dreamer. She thought she still had time. She thought I was still nursing my wounds, still deciding what to do. She didn't realize the floor was already collapsing beneath her, one silent step at a time. That's the thing about liars. They spend so much time rehearsing their stories, they forget to check the exits. And by the time they do, the lights are already out. The fundraiser was her idea, some desperate grasp at reclaiming a public image she didn't know had already slipped through her fingers. It was for the local arts guild, hosted at the community hall downtown, the same hall where we'd celebrated our 10th anniversary surrounded by friends who once toasted to forever. She spent the week leading up to it rehearsing her speech in the mirror, laying out her dress, curling her hair the old-fashioned way like she used to before she lost the need to impress me. I offered to go with her, said nothing about what I knew, just smiled and said she'd do great. She took it as a white flag, a sign I was warming back up, maybe even forgiving her. She wore that same silver dress again, the one from the restaurant, still not realizing that silver can tarnish when handled too many times. The event was packed, dozens of people from every layer of her world, mingling, sipping cheap wine and nibbling at catered cheese cubes. I stayed a step behind her as she moved through the room, flashing the smile she thought still worked, touching elbows, name-dropping projects she no longer had any stake in. The cracks began almost immediately. Her best friend Gina, who'd once helped cover for her, turned and walked away without a word the moment Melissa approached. Another former ally offered a stiff nod, then pivoted mid-sentence to speak with someone else. Her father, seated near the podium, looked at her with eyes that no longer offered warmth, just quiet calculation and a mouth set in cement. Still, she pressed on. She got up to speak. The microphone crackled, the room dimmed slightly, and for a brief moment she stood there illuminated, thinking the spotlight still loved her. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice just a touch too high, trying to mask the nerves. "It means so much to support creative integrity in these difficult times." And that was when the screen behind her flickered. I didn't even have to move. Just clicked the remote from my seat at a back table, one slow press, one perfectly timed file. The projector switched from the Arts Guild logo to a silent slideshow, images only. Her, in the studio. Her, at the hotel. Her, laughing with the man she swore was just a business contact. Timestamps on every corner. Credit card receipts beneath each frame. No words. Just truth. Her voice cracked on the word community. The room didn't gasp. It inhaled and held it, stunned into frozen stillness. She turned, eyes wide, seeing herself unfold on screen. "That's fake," she stammered, stepping back from the mic. This is a mistake." But the slideshow didn't stop. It kept going, one frame after another. Conversations she'd had, synced from the cloud. Her using my name to book rooms. Her laughing in bed with another man. Silent, damning, absolute. She turned to me, not pleading, but furious, rage masking fear. "You did this?" she hissed. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Her voice rose as she tried to claw control back. "This is harassment. This is illegal. You can't just—" Her mother stood up and walked out. Her father followed. A man she once pitched to leaned over and whispered something to the woman beside him, then both stood and left without touching their drinks. She tried to laugh then, an awkward, high-pitched, too loud attempt to convince everyone she was still the person they thought she was. "Okay, so I've clearly made some enemies," she joked, eyes darting around for support. None came. Even the bartender avoided her gaze. That's when her hand went to her necklace, a nervous habit, and found nothing. The clasp had broken the week before. She looked lost, disarmed. For the first time, she was without her props, her mirrors, her safety nets. The slideshow ended. The room stayed quiet. She looked back at me, her lips parted, waiting for me to say something, to break the tension, to rescue her from the collapse she'd engineered. I stayed seated, calm, unmoving, just watched. She stared at me for a few seconds too long, as if trying to pull emotion from a well that had long since run dry. And when she found none, when she finally realized that I had already left her long before the doors opened tonight, her shoulders fell. She picked up her purse with a hand that trembled just enough to betray the mask one final time, turned toward the exit, and walked out into a silence she couldn't rewrite. I stayed, not to enjoy it, but to bear witness. Because when someone sets fire to your home, they don't get to control the ashes. I didn't have to destroy her. I just had to stop protecting her from herself. It happened at her sister's engagement party, of all places. White tablecloths, champagne flutes, pastel flower arrangements like the setting was built for a fairy tale no one believed in anymore. Melissa had the nerve to show up in a red dress, like she was still the center of the story, like none of the scorched earth she left behind clung to her heels. I didn't plan to speak, not there, not then. But sometimes the truth doesn't wait for the perfect moment, it kicks the door in. It started when her mother approached me with that brittle smile, the kind people wear when they're trying to pretend the room isn't made of glass. "Thank you for being civil," she whispered. "She's been through so much." I looked at her, not cruelly, but clearly. She caused so much. Melissa appeared beside us then, like she'd heard her cue. "Rick," she said, too loudly, as if volume could erase history. "Nice of you to show. Still playing martyr?" That was the spark. I turned to her and said, "Still playing victim?" Her sister's laughter died in her throat. Her father, across the yard, froze mid-toast. Melissa stepped in closer, voice dropping, venom rising. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone. That video stunt? Childish." I stepped back so the whole table could hear me. "You mean the video where you were in a hotel with a man you lied about for 6 months? That one." A few people gasped. Her cousin actually dropped a plate. Melissa's face turned white, then red, then white again. "You planned that. You ambushed me," she shouted. "You stalked me, manipulated the story." "No," I cut in, voice low but unshakable. "You manipulated the story. I just printed the ending." Her sister stepped between us. "Guys, maybe now's not—" "No," I said, holding up a hand. "She wants the spotlight. Let's give her the stage." Melissa's hands were shaking. "You think this is justice? You think you're some noble man exposing evil? You're pathetic. You were never enough for me, and you knew it. That's why you were always trying to buy my love like it came with a receipt." I nodded slowly. "Right. And you were too busy selling your dignity to notice I stopped buying." She stepped forward, tears now sliding down her cheeks but her voice still sharp. "You're a failure, Rick. A washed-up, greasy-handed loser who wouldn't know what love looks like if it punched him in the mouth." I smiled, cold and clean. "No, I know what love looks like. I just learned what fraud looks like too. Turns out, it wears designer boots and lies about gallery openings." People were backing away now, giving the scene space. Her father stood silent, watching like a man finally seeing the truth behind a fog that had lifted too late. Then, behind Melissa, he appeared, Trevor, the other man, standing at the edge of the lawn like someone who'd walked into the wrong funeral. "That him?" I asked. "That your big escape plan?" Melissa spun around, startled. "Trevor, don't listen to him. He's Trevor," I said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "She told me you were just business. She told you I was crazy. But here's the thing, she told both of us what we needed to hear to keep funding her fantasy. You were the fun. I was the funding." Trevor turned and left without a word. No goodbye. No glance back. Just vanished like a shadow when the lights go up. Melissa looked around and realized the crowd wasn't on her side. No one was stepping in. No one was defending her. Even the ones who'd once gossiped with her were now silent, ashamed by association. She turned back to me, voice now cracking under the weight of it all. You've ruined me." I stepped closer, calmly. "No, Melissa. I just stopped protecting the version of you you invented. You ruined yourself." She collapsed into a chair, hands covering her face as the tears overtook the performance. Her sister stood frozen. Her mother quietly walked away. Her father gave me a nod, small, solemn, the only apology he knew how to give. I didn't stay for cake. I didn't say goodbye. I just walked out, past the crowd, past the silence, past the ruins of a woman who thought she could rewrite truth without consequences. And as I stepped into the sunlight, I realized something else. This wasn't revenge. This was release. And God, did it feel clean. She moved out 2 weeks after the fundraiser, but not before the bank called to say she'd attempted to access accounts that no longer existed in her name, not before her boutique lease was officially terminated due to ethical concerns. That spread through the vendor circuit like fire through dry brush. Her social media disappeared overnight, then reappeared under a new handle with 0 followers, no bio, no photos, just a ghost in a hollow echo chamber. Friends she once bragged about quietly erased her from group chats, stopped tagging her in anything public, and when she tried to explain her side of the story, not one of them responded. She called her father. He hung up. She showed up at her sister's apartment and waited 3 hours in the cold before the porch light turned off without a word. Trevor? Gone. No warning, no goodbye, no forwarding number. The moment her life stopped being curated and convenient, he vanished like a stain scrubbed off by self-preservation. She rented a room in a dying town 40 miles out, took a job answering phones at a tire shop where nobody asked questions because they didn't care who she used to be. The fall wasn't dramatic. It was worse. It was slow, daily, excruciatingly quiet. 1,000 humiliations that wore her down like sandpaper against a photo until the image of who she pretended to be was nothing but blur. Then, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, she knocked on my door. Same coat I bought her years ago, now soaked and clinging to her frame like it wanted to leave too. Her eyes were red, makeup streaked down to the collar, but it wasn't the crying that struck me, it was the absence. The arrogance, the entitlement that had carried her through every deception had finally run dry. "Rick," she whispered. "Please." I didn't say a word. Just held the door frame with one hand and looked at her like I would a stranger selling broken promises. "I'm not asking to fix anything," she said, voice quivering. I want you to know that I never stopped loving you." I tilted my head slightly. "Then you should have loved me while you had me." Her breath caught. "I was stupid. I know that now. I lost everything. You're the only person who ever truly saw me." I nodded once. "I did. That's why I left." She stepped forward, desperate, drenched, shaking. "Can't we just start over? Even if we don't go back, can't we at least talk?" I looked down at her suitcase, at the edges of the life she was trying to drag into my world again like a beggar offering scraps. "Talk about what?" I asked, steady as steel. "How you sold your soul for attention. Or how you're only here now because no one else is answering your calls." She blinked hard. "That's not fair." I took a deep breath. "Melissa, you want redemption, but you haven't earned it. You want forgiveness, but you never gave any. You want closure, but closure isn't owed. It's earned in the silence after everything collapses. And you've never once lived in that silence. You filled it with lies." Her bottom lip trembled. "So that's it." I stepped back and closed the door halfway. "No, that's peace." And then I shut the door. No slam. No drama. Just finality. She stood there for a moment, hoping I'd open it again. I didn't. The rain kept falling. She turned and walked away, suitcase dragging through the mud, leaving behind the last illusion she had of who we were. And me? I made a cup of coffee, put on some Zeppelin, and went back to living like a man who knows what he's worth. Thanks for listening to my story. Let me know where you're from in the comments. And if you made it to the end, did it hit the way you expected? Or harder?